What's up, guys? How's it going, history? I missed you guys. It's week 3 of online learning, and oh boy, am I ready for it to be over. But it doesn't look like that's an option, so we're going to keep trucking our way through World War II. Did that rhyme? Yes, it did. Was it on purpose? Yes, it kind of was. Was it impressive? Because that's what I was shooting for. I got a hat on today. I got my headphones off because I figured out how to make my mic work without it. I do have my window open today. One of my mustache hairs is rubbing my nose and it made me sneeze a minute ago, so I'm trying to avoid that. Sorry. Got my window open today, so you may hear some outside world noises, but I need some fresh air. It's like 1,000 degrees in my house. My brother left the heat on, and it is pretty, what's the right word? It's just awful. It's just awful. So we're cooling off a little bit. It's 6:30 p.m. I'm drinking a cup of coffee. It's a horrible idea. I'm not going to go to bed till like 3 a.m. So what's better than to talk about World War II? Now, World War II is a huge chapter. It's actually slide-wise one of the largest we have. So we're going to break it into 2 weeks. 2 weeks here. We're going to get through about 12 slides today, hit the other 8 next week, call it a nice easy. What that means for you is no test till next week. How exciting. You're welcome. However, this week was a little weird. You do have a quiz available today if you're watching it on Monday, but you do need to complete the quiz from last week. It's available. Go check it out. Best of luck to my history boys and girls. Someone just tagged me on something in Instagram. It's my good pal Christian. It's a meme about Call of Duty. Very funny, Christian. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. Make sure you guys are keeping up with your work on Moodle. Turn that stuff in. Make sure you're keeping up with me. Check in with me on Thursdays. You know I love to see you there. World War II, let's get after it. The Great Depression, man. Things are going downhill, all right? We are in a weird state of the world. We have had things unprecedented before. My brother's pulling into the driveway. They went to the park with the dogs. Um, Things in the world have happened that we never saw coming, right? World War I, for instance. We didn't think there would be such a global war with huge impacts that spread the globe. And now we have countries paying the price. We have countries thriving because of World War I. And then one of those thriving countries, the United States, instantly gets plunged into the Great Depression, which is we lost billions of dollars in today's money. Millions of jobs were lost, right? And money was just gone for people. We went from the roaring 20s to the Great Depression like that. So World War II creates an issue where we're killing each other again, right? It's 30 years past the World War I, and now we have World War II. We're killing each other at a rate that we have never seen with weapons we didn't know we could create, and that is going to create some major problems. But how did we get to that problem? All right, how did we get to that problem in the world? Hostilities increased across the globe because no one wanted to relive World War I. We had these countries living in fear of that event happening again. So some of those countries were the United States, England, the Allies in World War I, worried that the Axis, the bad guys, right, would be doing bad things again if they were allowed. So Japan, Germany, Italy, they couldn't do a lot of things as a country, or else they would face some consequences, and that was to prevent something like World War I happening again. Now, a lot of this may have been overprotective, right? And sometimes being overprotective can lead to, if you have an overprotective parent, it can sometimes lead to a child rebelling and acting out even more. And then something even worse happens. That's kind of the case we have here in World War II, right? So, because of the Depression, people were desperate and more likely to support aggressive and radical leaders. And that means you have to remember that the Great Depression was not just America, right? The Great Depression, because of America's global involvement in other countries and the Depression being such a wide-reaching event, many other countries were launched into their own depression, and countries who got aid from the United States or traded with the United States suffered as well, because the United States couldn't buy goods at the rate they were or at the price point they were. Therefore, if you depended on exporting goods to the United States, you were kind of screwed, unfortunately. And so that led to these countries whose people were dying of hunger, starvation, dehydration, just poor living conditions. Poverty was striking all over the country. That population was more likely to support radical change and leaders because they supplied jobs. And this is where Adolf Hitler is really going to get his power, right? When Hitler comes to rise in Germany, he promises that he will get people jobs. He'll get them working. He'll get them income, cash. And people love getting money. And the way that Hitler is able to do this in, say, for instance, Germany, is making war supplies, right? He is going to help them. War provides money for the most part, until you're actually in the war. But pre-war, like selling weapons, creating weapons, will get people jobs, will get factories working. So here's some examples. For Japan, they invade Manchuria, and they conquer Manchuria in 1932. So with the invasion and conquering Manchuria, since they won, to the spoils of war go the victor, they gain resources, they gain labor force, they gain anything that they really want from the country of Manchuria. The US sits back and does kind of nothing, partially because, look at the date, 1932, we are in the Great Depression. We don't really have the resources to spend defending Manchuria. And what this does is it gives a hint, a little taste, a little sniff, an odor of laxness among the world, where Japan did something naughty, right? They did something they shouldn't have done, and they got away with it. European dictators rise to power. Some of these are going to be very important. I very much could see myself on the quiz for World War II, putting a little matching section and having you name who was the leader of the United States during World War II, who was the leader of Germany, who was the leader of Russia, right? Who's the leader of Italy, England. You need to know Japan. You need to know these, all right? And we're going to talk about them all. Adolf Hitler, leader of the Germans, one you should know. He creates the National Socialist German Workers' Party, becomes known as the Nazis, right? And the Nazis spent millions of dollars building a huge military. Now, Germany was not allowed to build a large military, but Hitler did a good job of hiding it from England and the other countries that were watching Germany, because they were dealing with their own problems due to the Great Depression. And with what's happening here with Hitler, he creates a massive military that he uses to secure goods and money and resources and labor that he can use to expand his reach and dominance and power. He is what he is known as. He is as he is known as a fascist, right? He is a fascist, and that includes a government that is more important than the individual, and that the government will supply. So it's not communist, but it's somewhat kind of like socialist, but it has different beliefs and values. But in the way of that the government is more important than the people, that is similar. It's led by a single dictator. It's very militaristic, and that's what Hitler thrived on. And the Nazis use intimidation of their party to fear people, or to control people with fear. And they, through this fear in the population and the radicalness of their situation, go ahead and they follow Hitler, and they follow these radical leaders who are promising things that sound great, but they don't tell them the struggle it's going to take to get there, right? And that is a big issue. And they don't know that Hitler's planning to rule the world, or that he's very, very racist against the Jews, and they don't know he's planning the Holocaust. They don't know he's planning on challenging in the entirety of Europe for dominance, right? All they know is that this guy is different than the guy before, and the guy before screwed us. He got us nothing. So this guy comes in, he's charismatic, right? Hitler's charismatic. He loves Germany. Hitler loves Germany. He fought in World War I, right? He's been injured in the military. He would have a Purple Heart, right, if he was in the U.S. military. He loves his country, man, and he wants to see them succeed, and he wants people to get jobs. And people say, all right, wait, what do we got to lose? We already got totally jacked in World War I. We owe the world too much money, right? We are in poverty stricken, we're hungry, we're thirsty. Hey, Hitler, you can't do any worse than where we are. And Hitler didn't. He thrived. He thrived in that country for a while, until he obviously kind of shows his crazy, starts invading countries and pushing for military dominance and power, and leads to World War II and the Holocaust and things like that, right? Um, Another one, Benito Mussolini. That's somebody you should write down as well. You got Adolf Hitler in Germany, Benito Mussolini in Italy. And for quite some time, it seems like Mussolini is Hitler's right-hand man. And they work together. They're both fascist dictators in countries that neighbor each other, that they're close to each other. He rises to power similar to that same way. And they are aggressive. Germany, Italy, Japan have all shown signs of aggression, and no one does anything because they're too worried that another world war will break out, and the world can't handle that right now. And hey, we have our own problems. We're in the Great Depression. Okay? We can't be double depressed. We can't take on two issues that are too large. We'll be double depressed. No one wants to be double depressed. Right? Right? But the appeasement of these people, the appeasement of these countries, leads to these fascist leaders gaining so much power and momentum in Europe that it leads to World War II, right? Which is an even bigger problem than taking over, Poland or whatever it may be. So, America stays out of the war for many, many years. We stay out of the war. We do a couple things to protect number one, baby. That's ourself, the United States, right? We don't want another war. We can't afford it, man. We're in the Great Depression. This is the poorest we've been ever. We World War One. The people are just settling down, right? We can't ask them to fight. We're in the Great Depression. We need to fix ourselves, right? So we stay isolated. We stay isolationist. We are focusing on just ourselves. We're not on the good guy side. We're not on the bad guy side. In fact, we are going to make it easier to access the United States to everyone. We're going to lower our tariffs, which means it's cheaper for us to interact with other people, other countries in trade. Two, we're going to recognize the Soviet Union. And this was a big deal. This was a huge deal because we were finally saying, okay, we see communism, right? For so long, we were so scared of communism. We didn't want to deal with it. But the depression becomes our main priority, not the fear of communism. And so the depression is a step above communism. We actually say, okay, Soviet Union, we see you. And part of that is because Russia is so big and they buy so much stuff. We needed to recognize them as a country. And we put out a couple good neighbor policies. We want people to help us, right? We're going to help them in their time of need so that they can help us in our time of need. And part of this was you could see what was happening in the world. You could see Japan taking over Manchuria. You could see Germany plotting against Poland. You could see Mussolini killing his own people. You could see Stalin killing his people in Russia and the Soviet Union, right? Joseph Stalin, leader of the Soviet Union. Might want to write that down. And the U.S. had to try to avoid being accused of favoritism because when it hits the fan, when people start shooting, the U.S. wants to be there, but not to give each other, to hug each other or to make peace, but to sell guns. We want to make money off of what's about to happen. And you can make less money if one side hates you, or if one side feels like you care about the other side more. So the U.S. doesn't want to be accused of favoritism. We don't care who you are. If you want to pay us money to get guns, we'll take your money because we need it. So we want to make sure that everyone knows we can sell some guns. So in 1935, 1936, and 1937, we passed what is known as the Neutrality Acts. And so what part of this was is it was unlawful for the president to ship, sell, or loan war supplies to a nation at war. And so politics is a game, right? Everything is a game. You cannot have the American people think you're supplying bad guys with weapons or even good guys with weapons because that can create some kind of protest and uproar amongst the people. So we actually passed something that says, is it illegal for us to sell supplies to a nation at war? And so we come up with this policy called cash and carry, right? Um, so if you know the timeline of World War II, you know America doesn't join World War II till much later in the war at Pearl Harbor, which we will talk about later in this section. It's actually what we're going to end this section with, basically. And for years, up to 1936, we are selling weapons to nations at war. But there is public outcry because you're fueling a fire, right? You're fueling something that's going to turn into a really, really bad situation. So the deeper the war gets, right, the more you start to see that Hitler's the bad guy, that Mussolini's the bad guy. You don't want to sell them weapons, but America doesn't want to get caught with their hand in their pocket, right? You don't want to get caught with your wallet being the last thing the most important thing you're holding on to, because we still have to be good friends with England. We still have to be good friends with the Allies and the people that we have been working with for many years. So that's why the Neutrality Act is passed, for us to basically show Germany, oh yeah, sorry, we made it a law. We can't trade with you anymore. We can't sell guns to you anymore. So, but of course it's a game, so we are going to find a way to around those laws, right? Loopholes to sell to the English, which we do. And part of this was the cash and carry policy for non-war supplies, right? So this was anything, no bullets, no guns, no grenades, whatever, but clothing, food, whatever it may be, you could sell, but it was cash and carry, and that's exactly what it sounds like. You had to, one, pay in cash, and two, you had to bring a boat to the United States, pick it up, and take it back to your country. We were not doing any of the dirty work, right? Now, when you break it down and ask yourself which country would more likely be able to follow this new policy, would it be Germany, who is still in a depression from World War I? And to get to the United States, they have to pass by England. Or is it England, who doesn't have to pass by Germany and has a lot more money? Right? So it's a game. It's a loophole. So England is able to take advantage of the cash and carry policy for quite some time, and Germany is not. Other things here, like FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, I put that down, the president of the United States during World War II, calls Japan's invasion of China an incident and not a war. And so kind of what this did is it said the Neutrality Acts did not apply, right? They weren't an act of war. So it was just an incident. Same thing with anything England did, right? It's an incident, not a war. Therefore, the Neutrality Acts do not apply. So, again, it's a game. There's a lot of ways around different loopholes and things that presidents want to happen or not happen. If FDR wanted to sell weapons to England, we were going to sell weapons to England. FDR said that we should quarantine aggressive nations. That's a hot word right now, and it has been back in the day. We should quarantine aggressive nations and keep them from spreading their beliefs or their negativity, right? We don't want communism to spread, so therefore, to keep it not spreading, we need to put it in its own room. We need to quarantine it where it is and not let it spread and infect people around them. More aggression in Europe. It just continues to get worse for Europe as Hitler rises to full power in the potential he sees for the Third Reich. They annex Austria and Czechoslovakia. They, let's see what else. Okay, we'll go back a little. He takes Austria, Czechoslovakia, where he says Germans are being mistreated. And as this is happening, Europe, Great Britain, Great Britain, England sees that this is happening. And they approach Hitler and say, after Austria, they say, stop doing that. Stop doing that, Hitler. He says, okay. Takes Czechoslovakia. And England's like, dude, what? You just said okay. You lied to us, bro. And he's like, yeah. Okay, and they meet and they agree on the Munich Pact in 1938, where Neville Chamberlain is the leader of England at the time. He says we're going to appease Hitler, right? Hitler is appeased. We're going to let him do it, right? Literally, Chamberlain shakes the hand of Adolf Hitler and says, "We will let you keep both areas, but you can't do it again." And guess what? Hitler does it again. And Neville Chamberlain eventually leaves power as Prime Minister of England, and Winston Churchill, that's an important one too. Winston Churchill, the leader of England during World War II, takes power. And Winston Churchill is a very interesting figure in American history. People didn't like Winston Churchill. He was kind of a jerk. He was kind of a drunk. He was kind of arrogant. But boy, did he have the gall it took to lead a country at war. And he wasn't afraid to put anyone down, put anyone in their place. He knew what it took to defeat somebody like Hitler, and he was the person England needed. Not the person they maybe wanted, but who they needed. And he leads them through World War II, and as soon as World War II is over, he gets the boot. Right? So Hitler is continually appeased until Winston Churchill is in charge there. And with more confidence for Hitler, the further he is able to pass his agenda and take over places that he thinks Germans should be the most important and well treated, is we slowly start to see his mistreatment and abuse of the Jewish people. The Nuremberg laws are passed in 1935, which directly targeted the Jews. It put a curfew on them. They had to carry identification cards, took away their right to own property. They couldn't travel. It was the Jim Crow laws of American slavery, but now on the Jewish people in Germany, and other land that Germany had taken over, and they would track the Jews. They would go into their businesses and take money. They would shut down businesses, split families up. They started moving the Jewish people into ghettos, where they lived in certain areas that could be monitored by the SS, right? The German, some of the German people, the German police that would police the Jews and make sure that they were following these laws. They were separated and gathered into ghettos. And it was in this time from 1935 until really the Holocaust. We don't really know exactly when that started, right? Because for a long time, the United States and other European countries and any country didn't know that the Holocaust was occurring. It wasn't until the 1940s when America starts to push back against the Germans and take over land that was gained by the Germans that they start to uncover Holocaust camps, right? Concentration camps, and seeing the devastation. And we will talk about that later. And understanding what was really happening, right? It was hard to grasp because of the genocide was so great and severe against the Jewish people and many others. And this is when Jewish people start to flee the U.S. or flee Germany. And it's really an awkward circumstantial time that a lot of Jews tried to flee to the United States. But the United States had a quota limit on immigrants from all over the world during the Great Depression because we didn't have money, we didn't have room, we didn't have jobs. Right? We couldn't even keep the United States citizens employed. So we were very limited on the amount of immigrants we could take each year because there wasn't jobs or money to go around, not even food to go around during the Great Depression. Another big thing that happens that Hitler is continually working on in 1939 is the Germans signing non-aggression pact with the Soviets, and part of this was because the Soviets were very busy focusing on themselves. They're still becoming this communist country, and they tell Germany, "Yeah, we're not going to mess with you. You can keep doing whatever you want. Just don't ever come into Russia, the Soviet Union." And Germany says, "Okay, that sounds like a good deal to me." And this is perfect for Hitler because much like in World War I, he wants to focus on Western Europe, right? He wants to make sure big old lumbering dumb Russia stays over there in the east and does nothing, and he can take France, England, whatever he needs to take. Kind of a similar strategy. And so, in spite of their differences, Hitler and Joseph Stalin agree to split Poland, and that's kind of the deal that they signed the aggression pact. They say that they're going to work together, that Germany will take over Poland, and that Hitler will leave the land, right? That Russia will take the land of Poland, and Hitler will take the people. because he needs laborers and Stalin needs the land. So Germany invades Poland and really demonstrates their strength. They invade Poland and they take over the country in a matter of days. They use this new offensive strategy called Blitzkrieg, which we'll talk about, where it is a layered attack that Hitler speedily and quickly just demolishes a town or a city and is able to take over through the land, the air, the sea, whatever he needs, through with his tanks, with bombings, and well trained soldiers to take over countries. It is the invasion of Poland in 1939 that, for the rest of the world, starts World War II. 1939. The U.S. will not join for another 2 years. But England and France finally say, enough is enough. We declare war on Germany. You broke our pact. We already appeased you twice. It's time to stop Adolf Hitler from what he's doing. And in 1939, World War II breaks out. The Nazis have great success in the beginning of World War II. They use Blitzkrieg, or also known as lightning warfare, to capture much of Europe. It comes in three waves. Airplanes first. The airplanes fly over, mostly bombers. They bomb important areas. They bomb tanks, units of tanks to take them out. They bomb ammunition depots, whatever it may be. Then the tanks come through and run over whatever is left standing up. And then after that, the infantry comes in and cleans up whatever needs to be cleaned up. And the rest of Europe just wasn't ready. And part of this was because Hitler had been building this military for almost a decade. That's all Germany did, right? He hired laborers. He told them, I'll get you a job. And in those factories, all they were doing was building weapons and resources for Blitzkrieg to exhaust. And in the first part of World War II, Germany cannot be stopped. They cannot be stopped. He used a very large labor force in his war effort from countries he had taken over, such as Poland, Austria, those who were not Germans or were not of the Aryan race. Right. This was Hitler's big idea, was this idea of the German, or the Aryan, like the German Aryan race, this master race of people, blonde hair, blue eyes, much of which he was neither of those things. Would rule the world because they were better than everyone. So he begins what's known as the final solution, right? To get rid of undesirables in Europe. This main group was the Jewish people, yes, and we're going to do a little thing on the Holocaust so you can get to understand it a little more. Gypsies included, homosexuals, blacks, the disabled, the mentally challenged, anything that wasn't the perfect Aryan person, right? There wasn't this master Aryan race, was subject to the final solution, where millions and millions, the numbers vary from 12 to 20 million people, are murdered in this genocide. If the number is 12 million, 8 million of those were Jews, right? So over 2/3 of the people killed in the final solution, the Jewish people, targeted by Adolf Hitler, because they would pollute his master Aryan race. Genocide is what that's called, a systematic killing of an entire race. They really came up with different ways to kill people in the Holocaust. It started out with basically firing squads, known as death squads for the Nazis, but they were killing so many people a day, it became inefficient for the Nazis to shoot every single Jew, because, one Jew did not equal one bullet in their minds. And so they come up with faster, more efficient ways to kill a higher number of people at the same time, eventually leading to gas chambers and things like that. Amongst these 18 major camps in Germany and other European nations that Germany had taken over. The biggest one, and the one that I believe killed the most Jews, Auschwitz, I'm sure you guys have heard of before. But very tragic, obviously, and it wasn't really known, right? Not a lot of people knew what was happening in Europe at the time, right? Until the Allies start to have success and push back the Nazis and see what's happening in these camps. No one really knows what is going to happen here. That number on the Holocaust, we're going to do our own little thing. a nice little web quest, I believe, on this, and it's gonna give you some more information. But millions and millions of people die. So actually, up until this point, um, there's about a 2 year period where Germany is beating everybody who steps in their way. It's actually not even a contest. The Nazis are having such great success. And in 1940, the Germans conquer France. They take over France with relative ease. And Hitler proclaims, we have one more battle to win. If we can take over England, nobody in Europe can stand in our way. And they fight the Battle of Britain late in 1940. Um, and it becomes this massive raid on London. They're bombing they're bombing for days and weeks. They're bombing um, London, trying to crush morale, and this is where Winston Churchill really gains his fame in World War II. Um, as you guys have heard of, probably if you've seen the movie Churchill, um, you may have seen a lot. I believe it's called Churchill, right? What movie am I thinking of? Is it just called Churchill? I think if you were in Solons's class, you probably watched it last year. I don't remember, but it's phenomenal. Yeah, you should watch it. As Gary Oldman, he plays. I believe he won an Oscar for it. But incredible movie. Of just kind of who Churchill was and kind of what he did for England and kind of just the resiliency England displayed during World War II was inspiring, really, to the rest of the world. It's a huge mistake because England finds a way, against all odds. It shouldn't have been a close. There should have been no way for England to withstand the German military, but they are on the island. Germany couldn't get across the English Channel and execute Blitzkrieg the way that they would have liked. And Churchill basically stands and tells people, "Hey, we can either fight back or we cannot." And I'm fighting back, so either go get blown up or fight back with me. And he was that guy who said it bluntly like that to the people. Um, Germany and Italy are joined by Japan in 1940. They create what's known as the Axis powers. Uh, so FDR continues to sell and make a ton of money in the wars in the years from about 1939 to 1941, probably a little sooner, 1935 to 1941. The U.S. Pulls themselves out of the Great Depression through World War II. Don't get it wrong. FDR did a ton of stuff in the New Deal that helped, but nothing helped more than being involved in World War II. FDR changes the cash and carry policy because England, after 2 years of fighting in the war, are broke as well. Partially because we are their biggest trade partner and we cannot trade with them because they are broke, we are broke, therefore we're both more broke. And so we create what is known as the Lend-Lease policy to England. And at this point in the 1938, 1939, 1940, we are telling the rest of the world, hey, we're on England's side here. We can't support Hitler because Hitler has been public at this time of his obviously he's lying, he's aggressive towards countries taking over Poland and such, but the Nuremberg laws have been out for half a decade at this point, 6 7 years. We understand he's anti-Semitic. We don't know about the Holocaust quite yet, but we know it's not somebody we want to hitch our horse to, right, our buggy to. So we will give England some war supplies if they can either return, replace, or repay us after the war. You can either return, replace, or repay us after the war. So it's really us coming out and saying, we don't care if we get it back, right? We don't need money or cash right now. We have to help our ally, our friend, our strongest ally in the world, England. We're here for you, buddies. You just got to return, replace, or repay, whatever it is. So Hitler, a lot of people will say there's three major mistakes Hitler made. Three major mistakes Hitler made. One of them is how he handled the Soviets. Joseph Stalin was kind of a mad lad. He killed millions and millions and millions of his own people. He was trying to push this communist manifesto while trying to make Russia, like the Soviet Union, this formidable opponent. He was going toe to toe with Hitler. He was helping him take over Poland. Just all of these weird situations happening in the Soviet Union. He said, "Hey, bro, like Hitler, we're not going to invade you. Don't worry." Hitler eventually kind of loses his mind, and in a weird move in 1941, he invades the Soviet Union in June. All right. Um, June is in middle of summer, but if anybody knows how the seasons work, what comes after summer? Fall and then winter, right? And so winter is the hardest. The Russian winter historically is undefeated. No one has ever defeated the Russian winter. Not even the Russians. All right. Napoleon failed due to the Russian winter. Many other greater, many more smarter, many more people who were smarter strategically, militarily than Hitler failed to the Russian winter. But he decides that he is going to invade Russia, and it is one of the biggest mistakes Hitler makes during World War II. And what Stalin does is he uses the scorched earth policy, where basically Stalin knows he cannot beat Hitler. But he tells his military, I want you to stay in each village, city, town, building as long as you can, and then as soon as they're about to get there, burn it to the ground and retreat. And what this did is, yes, it's kind of crazy, but as I said, Stalin was a mad lad. He would burn his own cities, kill his own cattle, torch his own cornfields, and every single time the Nazis pushed forward, they'd be like, there's nothing here for us. And eventually, the Nazis got so deep into Russia that when winter hit, they could not survive. They couldn't turn around. They couldn't go forward. They were stuck, and millions of people will die. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of soldiers will die in the Russian winter. Like I said, one of the biggest mistakes that Hitler ever makes. Japan continues their aggression, as in they took over Manchuria, they seize Indochina, and the U.S. responds by freezing all Japanese assets in the U.S., angering the Japanese. Some people say that this move by the United States, freezing their money, their assets in the U.S., led to their decision to attack Pearl Harbor 2 years later in 1941, which obviously pulls the United States into World War II. But Japan, there is a track record here for them being angry at the United States angering them. The United States, up until this point, has stayed clear of joining the war, and there was no real signs that we were going to join the war. A few things had been happening that led us to it. Pearl Harbor, obviously the catalyst that was the event that made us go, all right, it's time to go to war. But a couple other things we'll talk about that prepares us to get into war. Declare war on Japan and Germany, because the U.S. does start to prepare for possible involvement. General Tojo of Japan. Now, that's not the important person you should write down for matching, right? For Japan, the leader is Emperor Hirohito, Hiro Hiro, Hiro, Hirohito. Emperor Hirohito is the leader of Japan. Okay, so now we have Hirohito equals Japan, FDR equals USA, Hitler equals Germany, Stalin equals Russia, Mussolini equals Italy, and Churchill equals England. That is the 6 big ones you guys should know. All right, 6 big ones you should know. There will be a matching section on your quiz, so make sure that's something you're always kind of keeping in the old noggin. So General Tojo of Japan sends negotiators to Washington, D.C. because there was some time the U.S. suspected a Japanese attack. We just didn't know where, we didn't know when, and there is all these conspiracies about the U.S. knew that it was coming, and they should have, maybe we knew an attack was happening, so we sort of separated our ships. Whatever it may be, whatever the case may be, December 7th, 1941, there's a lot of great movies you can watch about this. The new one just came out. Midway, the battle, Midway, the movie. There is a scene about Pearl Harbor, very powerful scene, very very good scene. You guys should watch Midway if you haven't. I loved that movie. December 14th, 1941, one of the biggest surprise attacks in American history. Japan attacks Pearl Harbor in Hawaii on a Sunday morning when many sailors were still asleep in their bunks or at church with their families. Very early morning, they attack where the U.S. Pacific Fleet is. Many of our battleships were there. Many of our aircraft carriers were there. Fortunately, our entire fleet was not there, or else we would have been wiped for a majority of the war trying to recover from this. 5 battleships, 11 other ships, 170 aircraft, 2,400 people killed. So almost double that injured, killed from the Pearl Harbor attack, December 7th, 1941. There's a lot of stuff about this that you can read. You know, that Japan was planning this attack for nearly 2 years, I believe, or at least a year and a half. They had built their own fake Pearl Harbor off the coast of some island in Japan, where it was set up the exact way the United States had done this, or they set up Hawaii. So they had been planning this for years. And the day that they went to attack, a lot of the pilots actually got they wanted to kill Americans. They wanted to surprise attack us. The plan was that they would come in, basically bomb our factories, bomb the shipyards that they would repair ships in. They would bomb our supplies and our gas reserves and all of these different things. That's what they wanted to bomb. Then we couldn't fight, right? It doesn't matter if you have ships if they have no gas, if they have no way to be repaired. But instead, the pilots selfishly, because they wanted to kill Americans, bombed and attacked American ships, where yes, the death toll was higher and the devastation of that day was higher. But America was able to recover and repair because our shipyards were fine and we were back in the war, ready to defend and fight for the people who died that day, very soon. It is said that after Pearl Harbor, the general who was flying away just looked at his admiral or whatever it was and said, "My God, I fear all we have done is awoken a sleeping giant." Because the very next day, the United States declares war on Japan and Germany, and Hitler is pretty furious about this, that the U.S. is in the war because of something Emperor Hirohito had chosen to do. And with that, we are officially in World War II. And we declare war the next day, and hey, there we are. America is in the war. So that's it for the notes today, guys. Like I said, it's kind of a long section. So this was our getting prepared and into the war lecture. Next week is the actual lecture on the war. My AP class, hey, keep reading your guys' book. I think we're on chapter 25 this week. It's on your Moodle, so make sure you're doing that. My regular classes, guys, hey, just keep grinding on there. Keep working out all of your classes. I know it's a bummer. I know it's tough, but you guys are doing a great job. Know that I'm here for all of you guys. If you want to talk to me about anything, I got you, because I know you guys got me, like always. Keep it up. Keep emailing me. I'll see you guys Thursdays. I love seeing you there. Good luck on the quiz this week. Good luck on everything we got going on. I appreciate it. I will see you guys all soon. Have a great week.